What is up, my Shadowverse soldiers, and welcome back to another Shadowverse Evolved video. So it has been quite a bit of time since I made my last video, and I'm sorry for this extensive amount of delay, but with everything that was happening with New Year's and Christmas and everything, I had to, pay attention to family and whatnot, so I'm very sorry that I have not made this video yet, but I'm very excited to talk about today's video and everything that's been going on since this new year. But before we get into that, I want to give a small thank you. Thank you everyone for watching this video and clicking on this video. It means a lot to me that you guys are still rocking with me and we are still doing the Shadowverse Evolve thing. We are going to be definitely having a channel update for 2025, so go ahead and look forward to that. But we have to make sure we finish all the Inverse Academy episodes before we start doing things for 2025. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the premier deck that came out in set 7. People are probably already accustomed to it, and if you haven't, then you'll probably get a good extensive amount of information by the end of this video on what this deck does. So Natura Dragon is going to be one of those decks that really does have a lot of uninteractable damage, and it's kind of like Egg in a weird way when you have cards in the EX area. If you don't have cards that interact with anyone's EX area, that banishes it, and there's only like 2 cards in the game that do it. So it's usually going to get away with a lot of damage, but it does take time to get the damage to an extensive amount to where you can't control it. But before we get into the deck, let's go ahead and go over the pros and cons. Alright, so looking at the pros and cons, so we have pros as a ramp, filter, forte, burn damage, while the cons have hand size removal and setup. Alright, starting off with our first point, we have ramp. So of course, if we're going to be using Dragoncraft, we wouldn't be the Dragoncraft class if we weren't really ramping in our deck. So getting those extra play points is just going to be the Dragoncraft way, and it's going to get you ahead. So being ahead of the game and then being able to play your big boss monsters very early against your opponent is going to be very good. And then of course the one other problem that Dragon really had was that it didn't really have a lot of draw, but in this deck there's a lot of filters, so you're going to be drawing cards and then discarding them as you're going along in the game, so you can keep cards that you want to, get rid of the ones that don't really matter, and then with other extra cards you're going to be drawing extra cards as well. And of course, there is Forte, a Dragoncraft staple. Having that Storm Aura and just swinging in for 7 damage can sometimes be vital and game ending. And then we have burn damage, so there's going to be non-interactable burn damage that you can't really stop through this deck, so that's going to be very good. Alright, and then getting over into the cons, so we have hand size being the first one. So of course we are going to be filtering, but you have to remember when you are drawing and discarding, your hand size isn't changing. It's just you filtering out what you need and putting cards in the cemetery for whatever you need. So, unless you have the card concoction of the Trail of Light, then your hand size really isn't going to plus. And then we have removal. So of course we have some removal in the deck. There's not like there's no removal. It's just not a lot. So if your opponent builds a big board, you're gonna want to trade into other bodies with bodies, and you don't really want to be doing that. And then we have setup. So for this game plan, it's not really a storm deck. You're not going to be playing very aggressively. You need to set up. So of course, your biggest enemy is going to be those early aggro decks. Yes, I'm looking at Idolmaster Cool, since I think that's probably the best aggro deck I think of, outside of Fairy Forest. That's going to be just storming you out, and there's not really that much you can do when they hit the gas pedal. Alright, so let's talk about our premier legendary. So we have Valdain, the Cursed Shadow. So he's a 4-cost 4/4. You can evolve him for 2, but you can also evolve him for 0, and you can only activate if there are at least 10 Natura cards in your cemetery. When he comes into play, you look at the top 3 cards of your deck, you may reveal a Natura card from among them and add it to your hand, and then you bury the rest, which really does help out with that bury effect, because you will be needing to evolve it for 0 later on in the game to, help out with those play points. And then we have the evolved version, which he turns into a 5/5, but on evolve, you can choose one of the following effects. You can either 1, select enemy following the field and deal 4 damage, search your deck for a Shadow's Corrosion to put it into your EX area, then shuffle your deck, or you can 2, select a Shadow's Corrosion in your cemetery and play it for 0 play points. Now there are some instances where you're going to need to use the second ability, because you need to make sure you choose a follower on the field to deal 4 damage to be able to select the Shadow's Corrosion to put into your EX area from your deck. And speaking of Shadow's Corrosion, so we have Shadow's Corrosion, so it's a 3-cost spell, and this card can't be played from the EX area, and at the start of your end phase, if this card is in your EX area, you deal 1 damage to each enemy leader for every 5 Natura cards in your cemetery. When you do play the card, it does select an enemy on the field and deal 4 damage, and if there's a Valdain Cursed Shadow on your field, put this card into its owner's EX area. Alright, so working off what we have here, we're going to be playing Valdain and getting any Natura card that we want off of the top 3, and then the rest are going to get buried, and then hopefully if you have those 10 Natura cards in your cemetery, you can evolve this man for free to be able to deal 4 damage and get a Shadow's Corrosion out of your deck, but it does have the other ability to get it out of the cemetery and playing it into your EX area for 0 play points, which is very nice. Alright, so let's look at the cards that are going to be helping us manipulate manipulate by getting Natura cards into the cemetery and also putting out Natura and Great Trees on the field. Alright, and the first card we're going to be looking at is Feral Aether, so it's a 1-cost spell that just summons a Natura and Great Tree, and if Overflow is active for you, you can summon up to 3 instead. Do remember that you can choose between 0 and 3 if the situation ever calls for it to not use anything for a spell, which, you know, at least just get 1 out of it, but it's not too bad. Alright, and then next up we have Lightning Velociraptor. So it's a 2-cost 3/2. When it comes into play, you summon a Natura and Great Tree token, and if Overflow is active for you, summon up to 2 instead, and you give this follower Rush. So not bad for a follower, especially to swing into something with, you know, like 3 defense or something, or, you know, to really soften something up to, you know, use other spells like Shadow's Corrosion to, like, you know, burn them for the rest or whatever you need to do. But we're really using him for the Natura and Great Tree spawn because, you know, having those extra 2 tokens on the field and then having those 5 play points to, you know, filter through your deck and then get rid of Natura cards you're not going to be using is really going to, you know, speeding up your game plan for Valdain and Shadow Corrosion. Alright, and then we have Whirlwind Pterodon. I think I said that correctly. I'm sorry. I'm not a huge dino expert or anything. I just remember dinos from, you know, Dragon Power Rangers Dino Thunder. But outside of that, this is a 3-cost 3/2. When it comes into play, you banish an Natura and Great Tree token from your field to increase your maximum play points by 1. And do remember, when you are banishing a Natura and Great Tree, you will be using the effect to draw and discard because it is leaving the field. But when it does die, you summon a Natura and Great Tree token, which is pretty nice as well. Not gonna lie, when seeing this in casual play, I thought this card had Ward because of the last words, like summoning a Natura and Great Tree, but the thing about these last words cards is that your opponent is going to have to answer these cards because no one wants to take 3 damage to the face. And of course, if you don't already know what the Natura and Great Tree token does, it's a 1-cost amulet. When this card leaves the field, you draw a card and then discard a card, and then you can just use its activate ability to get rid of it. Alright, so I did say that there wasn't too much removal for the deck, but there is just a little bit. You know, Dragoncraft isn't really known for its, you know, ground staking removal, but with the new card Viridian Magna, I think it is a pretty staple removal card to just go ahead and get rid of something on the field that's super scary. No matter what the stats that they have, it just has that bane. Alright, and looking at our first card, we have Wildfire Tyrannosaur. So it's an 8-cost 6/6. When this card is discarded, you can spend 1 point to select the enemy fall on the field and deal it 3 damage. You can also play it and then banish an Natura and Great Tree from the field and deal 3 damage to each enemy follower on the field. So if you're getting into the late game, of course, one thing about Dragoncraft is your hand size is not going to be very big. So when you get into these big boss monsters, you're not going to really want to get rid of them through, you know, the discard effect unless you're in the early game and you want to just take something out, which is not that bad because, you know, you're going to be ramping, so you should have the extra play points to, you know, commit for the extra 3 damage. But this is going to be a good double side card for either pitching and then also playing in the late game. So we have Purgation's Blade. So if you have the extra play points and you want to run the Maisha package, which is not that bad for set 7, I think Maisha's pretty good, especially with that evolve ability. I think this is something to look into. And what would Dragoncraft be without Conflagration to deal 5 damage to everything on the field? Because sometimes the situation might call to just deal 5 to everything. Alright, so I really enjoy Viridian Magna in this deck just because her last words effect is going to help you for your whole game plan. You're going to swing this into a follower that's super scary, don't really care the stats, you know, that Bane is just too good with the Assail. It's just too good. I love this card. And then, you know, the last words is going to help you filter for your Shadow's Corrosion, so it's just perfect for this deck. Alright, so let's look at some other neutral cards that are going to be really helping for the deck. So we have Trail of Light, of course, because we're going to be drawing and discarding, so why would we not want to draw another card? We have Colorful Cook, which is also a Natura card that can go into the cemetery, and then with the last words, you can fuel up another Natura card that you might get rid of. And then we have Desert Pathfinder, which with the fanfare, putting in a Natura and Great Tree is just amazing. And then having those 5 cards and then looking at the top 3 for another card is good too. But what really surprised me was this last card. So we have the Extreme Carrot. So the one thing I didn't pay attention to because I'm not a true Dragoncraft player, I'm so sorry for not paying attention to this tech. But Extreme Carrot is going to be pretty good to, you know, just rush into a follower and then using that last word to spend 1 to get rid of a Natura and Great Tree, draw a card. You have a Natura card in your cemetery by using the Extreme Carrot's Rush. And then you can go ahead and get another Extreme Carrot and then heal. So I do want to give an honorable mention to the official Maisha. If you have space for it, I would recommend it for sure, especially with the Purgation Blade. And then with this on-evolve effect to give this girl Storm and then bearing the top 5 cards of your deck, you know, that's 5 extra Natura cards if you have them in your deck. If you don't have, you know, X amount of Maishas or whatever you need, you know, just having the perfect balance is going to be hard sometimes because in my games when I've run Maisha, I sometimes just never see her. And, you know, she's like the bane of my deck sometimes. So, like, I think just the very top 5 is just too good for this deck. just because you're able to just put those 5 cards, and that could potentially be the 5 cards you need for that extra 1 damage for Shadow's Corrosion. So I think the situation might call for Maisha to be a really good honorable mention to look into. Alright, so then we have the alternate routes. So I really don't want to call these alternate routes. It's just, you know, something else you can work on for your game plan outside of Valdain, because Valdain itself is not going to win you the game. Shadow's Corrosion itself is not going to win you the game. These are more cards that are going to help you progress in the game state and make sure you get that extra damage or the game-winning shot. So first card is Shenlong. Of course, we're going to be drawing 2 and then discarding a card, which can help us fuel for the Natura cards, and then healing the 5 is just going to be amazing while having that ward with the big stats. Just too good. Alright, so this next card, I believe, should honestly just be a staple, but not every deck needs to run it. We have Necromancer's Rites, so if you want to burn for some extra damage, which you should be doing with the Shadow's Corrosion, you know, those Natirian Great Trees are always going to feel this card. So I think the Natura deck was just a huge thing that Necromancer's Rites needed, so I think this is a pretty good card to look into. Alright, and lastly, we have our best horse. We have Oguri Cap. So, of course, with her fanfare, it's just a godsend that we needed it. We're going to be using the Tyrian Great Trees to go ahead and filter in as many Natura cards as we have. We see Oguri Cap off of maybe one of those draw discards, and then with Oguri Cap's fanfare, we're just going to get rid of 2 Natura cards, give her Storm, and then give her that big stat boost with all the play points that we should have. Alright, I didn't want to make the video too long, so I'm not going to go into it any deeper. Let's go ahead and get into the grade of the deck, and then we will go ahead and finish off. Alright, so here is a sample deck list that I have created with the different types of concoctions that I've made from different deck lists I've seen. But I think this is pretty staple to go ahead and start off with. Of course, I'm going to be running Shenlong, Oguri Cap, and Necromancer's Rites because, you know, I'm just crazy like that. But I think all the cards just generate a lot of value together. You know, sometimes it might hurt to do some other plays, but I think the biggest hurt in this deck is that you don't see Valdain when you want to, because there are a whole bunch of other cards they're going to be drawing and filtering and whatnot, and there are some times where you might see Shadow's Corrosion, no Valdain, or Valdain, and then you don't have a body to hit on the field in certain matchups for Shadow's Corrosion. It's just hard. And of course, we're going to have the deck code in the description below, so go ahead and check that out if you want to, feel free to, but I'm not going to say this is like a tournament winning list. I think it's pretty strong, but you do have to be careful with some of the ratios because, you know, you can definitely mess up in this deck. Alright, so getting back into the grade of things, and I want to give this deck a solid A+. This deck is very strong. It has lots of good burn damage, so you know how I feel about burn damage, and if you don't, let me go ahead and tell you about it. The fact that it's uninteractable, you know, in some decks it's going to be nice to heal from the burn. I know I did say Forte was something that you should really look into for this deck, but how I built it was just for full burn. You know, Forte is good for the 7 damage. I'm not going to say like that's not something you need. I'd say go ahead and put in your deck if you have it. It's a Dragoncraft staple, but like I said, at the end of the day, I'm not a Dragoncraft player. I'm Rune all day, every day. But this deck is still pretty strong. It can really push through a lot of burn damage, good like late game hitting that ramp, and then filtering your hand as much as you can is just absolutely insane. But alright soldiers, that is the end of the video. I do have some announcements that we're going to be doing a lot coming up this January. We're going to be doing a lot of grinding for Shadowverse Evolve. I do want to stream the next Grand Showdown. I'm looking forward to everyone that will be in the stream, like come March or closer. I think it's March when the next Grand Showdown is. I'm definitely going to be like putting out alerts, you know, hey guys, come check out the stream. It's not going to be like an official one, but you know, it's just going to be a little close stream that we're going to have and talk about cards and whatnot. So I'm going to be very excited to do it. So I'm looking forward to that. Also, I will be putting a poll for the YouTube channel for as far as streaming. So this next tier list, I'm thinking of actually streaming it. For the longest time, I've just been doing tier lists for the Shadowverse Evolve sets every up to 7 or however long I've been doing this. You guys have been watching this stuff, so I'm sorry. It's been hard for me to keep track with all the stuff that's been going on here. But I'm thinking of actually streaming the tier list and having some input. I don't know if like that'll be too much insight from everybody because, you know, people feel very biased and stuff like that. But I feel like, you know, just doing it with everybody would be a really fun thing to do. So let me know in the comments below if you guys are down for that, or, you know, I'll finally get some real results from like maybe a poll I might do. I'm not sure. But yeah, most of the stuff I'm going to be covering, I'm going to be doing in the channel update for 2025, because we can't have the channel update for 2024 up there in this new year. By the way, Happy New Year's, guys. I appreciate you guys coming into the new year and watching me about this Dragoncraft video. This is way overdue, so I'm really excited to do the new reveals for set 8 and whatnot, but we got to make sure we finish everything for set 7 first. Alright, soldiers, that is everything I wanted to talk about. I will probably get more in depth with it with the channel update. If you guys have any questions, leave them down below or whatnot. I will try my best to answer them in the comments, or, you know, if you have any further questions when I go in depth with it, just let me know in that future video. But make sure you're safe in whatever you do tonight and safe whatever you do for the rest of the year. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Yeah. TRINN. Just to get you away. What I got to do, what I got to do. Just to get you away. What I got to do.